So we know time is very important. Now our second aspect of this is how much to invest. That's a critical thing because the more we can invest, the more that compounding or time can work on that number and build that number up, and it really kind of compounds and builds on itself. Now you might hear rules of thumb, right? You've ever heard the phrase rule of thumb? Kind of these wisdom or rules to live by. And one of the rules of thumb in investing is, that you should invest 10% of your income. And that sounds nice. It's a nice round number, right? 10%. Why not 9.5% or 11% or 2%, but 10% seems to be a number that a lot of people have agreed on as a rule of thumb. Now, I have some disagreement with it. I think 10 is a great number to shoot for, or maybe to work your way up towards, but maybe we can do better. Or maybe it's hard to start with 10%. I know when I first graduated from university, the thought of actually trying to invest 10% of my income was really difficult in a starting level job and, with some student loan debt to pay and all that. I really understand that. So how much should you invest? Well, my recommendation would be to start investing, to get started, because then you get that momentum behind you, and invest as much as you can, especially starting out. Maybe that's 2, 3, 4%. Maybe it's 5%. Maybe it's $50 or $100 US a month. Whatever it is, you can find some low-cost mutual funds. You can find some things to invest in where you can get started with some lower-cost investments, some index funds, possibly exchange trade funds, different things you can look at as far as an investment vehicle. But to get started, particularly if your employer maybe has a plan at work where they might match up to the first 3%. In the U.S., they would call those 401k plans, but maybe in other parts of the world, you might have a similar work plan or government plan that you can contribute to. And the key is to get started and to contribute, because letting that time build up, even over a small amount, is huge and very impactful, as we saw looking at the Money Chim compound interest calculator. So start with whatever you can and try to strive for that 10%. It's a good rule for a reason. So try to strive to get to that 10%, but then start, going beyond that. Go to 11, 12. Try to strive to get to 15%, and then beyond that, or even more, really stretch. Just think if you did 30% of your income, how much more impactful that'd be, especially over a long time horizon. We'll talk about risk and reward coming up next, so you can understand how to manage that well when you got 30% of your income in there. But you're enjoying life today, but also saving for a very secure future and giving you options in the future to reach whatever goals you have. So strive for that 10%, but at least get started with something to use that powerful combination of time and money working together. Okay, so where do we get this money, right? I talked about how I got started was, didn't have any money, was actually $10,000 in debt from student loans. Most folks are actually in many parts of the world worse off than that. So where do you get money? Well, one is living below your means. That's a real old adage of living below your means. You probably have heard this before too. And the more you can live below your means and give up some things, the more you can then invest and put that money in. Feel free to drive a little bit older car. Or if you live in an urban area, maybe you need a vehicle or a car or an automobile, and use the subway, use the train, use a bus, whatever it might be, to live below your means. Maybe you're not going out as many times a week or going to a restaurant. Maybe you cut that back, or you're bringing your lunch. Whatever it is, look for those small things that can really add up. Maybe it's a large coffee. Maybe you get a medium coffee. You'd be surprised when to do the numbers how much that can add up, especially if you're going 5-6 days a week for that coffee, maybe a couple times a day even. Look at those small things. I'll be surprised, like, boy, that really adds up. But also, a lot of folks say, well, look at the small things, because it's true, they do add up, but then they might ignore like these big monster things, like I have a big car payment, or I have this big expense, that I'm not taking, that I'm not even using. I just have this big expense every month. Maybe it's for cable TV or something like that. Maybe it's cellular phone, extra services. See what you can cut back or pay back from there, or maybe live without. So look at those small areas and those big areas, and then direct those things into your investments. And one other good thing that really works well, and did work for me over my whole career, is taking things like raises or bonuses, maybe you're in a commission type thing, and taking that money and just plowing it right into investing. That doesn't mean you can't take a little bit and go out and have a nice dinner to celebrate your promotion or something like that, or a nice bonus you made. Maybe even take a nice trip, even maybe a frugal type trip. You can do that too. But many people, they get like maybe a big windfall of money, or maybe they get a bonus and they just blow it right away. It was like, was it worth it for that amount of time? When you think about the power of compounding over time, if I earned, let's say, a $10,000 bonus, what a great thing. Well, instead of blowing that all on some mind-boggling trip, maybe I take a nice trip, or I go out to eat, but then I plow most of that money into my savings and let that work over time. So then later in my life, I can have these funds available to me, and even much more, because that's the whole idea of investing. We're trying to grow that pot of money. So my feeling is, enjoy life now for sure, but also, you're investing to have that secure future. Many people live like paupers and all that when they could live a little bit better. That's all up to you. It's your own personal choice. I would say, you'd be well ahead to give up some things now for that secure future long term. One last comment too about the right amount to invest. One thing you'd want to do, and highly recommend, and others recommend this too, is to build up an emergency fund for those unexpected bills. Maybe it's a health bill or healthcare bill or an automobile repair or something that you're like, gosh, I just got hit with this repair or this bill and I wasn't expecting it. That's where your emergency fund comes into play. I'd recommend, or other folks recommend, like 6 months worth of expenses, that you look at your budget, you look at your expenses, you track your expenses and say, if I lost my job or I was out of work or I had an unexpected bill, I would have, it's good to have 6 months of your expenses, not your income, but 6 months of your expenses available to you in a fund, cash, whatever it might be, that you can easily get at, easily liquidate. So start with a 6 month, but depending on your situation, you can maybe move that down to 3 months if you've got more funds in other places, or you've got some money and maybe you don't have to, expecting many things. You can play that down a little bit to 3 months, but you still need something, so maybe go to 3 months. Or you might need to build that up to 9 months or even a year, depending on your situation. Like maybe you're in a job where it's the job's kind of shaky. Maybe the company's really struggling, or there's a lot of layoffs in your industry. If you're in that situation, you might want a longer emergency fund because you might need to help cover your expenses during a period of a layoff or during a period of unemployment for you. So the whole idea of emergency fund, though, is it's there for emergency. So create your emergency fund, get your expenses paid, start paring back where you can with your expenses, and then at least get started with investing to let the power of investing and time work for you, and then build on that over your career and over your investing life cycle. You get those two things together, those core principles, and just to think about those, even if you've been investing for some time, can be very, very impactful. So right now, if you're like, I've been investing for some time, maybe now's the time to say, maybe I can invest a little bit more. Or maybe if I'm getting started with investing, maybe I can just get started now and see the advantages of that and play around with the MoneyChimp compound interest calculator or other calculators that are for free out there on the internet. The MoneyChimp is free, so take advantage of that one. All right, so those are two core concepts. Let's move on to the third core concept, which is risk and reward, or how much are we going to make on this money?